All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's first event of the Solana Season Hackathon. We were a few minutes late there. Sorry about that. But today we have a really exciting guest joining us for a fireside chat. We have Kevin Rose, partner of True Ventures, founder of Dig, founder of Zero. Bless you. I actually didn't even know you founded Zero, by the way. I use that app all the time.
Oh, awesome.
And he was actually our most recent guest on the Solana podcast. And so if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, it's going to be sitting in the top spot this week as well because we're skipping. So go ahead and give that a listen. It's one of our highest rated episodes of the season. So we cover a lot of really interesting things that we'll expand on within this chat, and then we'll also cover a lot of really other exciting things. Kevin's one of the judges for the hackathon as well, and NFTs are something that he's incredibly passionate about. So everyone here, if you're involved building an NFT project, this will be a great chance to ask him any questions live, get direct feedback on features that might be interesting and ways that Solana is a superior alternative to some of the existing applications available. And so I think with that, I want to toss over to you and Kevin, and y'all have fun.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah, awesome, awesome to chat with you again. So I think it's been like a couple weeks or a month. I can't tell in crypto time.
Yeah, exactly. Years.
Yeah, a couple of crypto years. I guess I'd love to hear like what you think has been interesting since our last chat in the NFT space.
Yeah, man, this is a space that's just moving so fast, and in a lot of right ways, and in a lot of like, I don't know if we should be doing this kind of ways. But I would say the exciting stuff is that the original projects, like things like CryptoPunks and what they've done, have just been continuing to be validated by traditional art world. We had that Christie's auction, which is just crazy. I think the fully realized price, which is, there's always a buyer's premium on top of the hammer price. It was somewhere around 19 million US dollars for the one alien, and then a few other punks thrown in there as well. So it was just insane to see this mixture of the traditional art world. You have Banksy's and these other paintings in the background that are actually going up, and then dropped in is the CryptoPunks in the middle of it. But I think this is not only is it validation, but it's also exposure. It's just really nice to see traditional art collectors getting exposed to this world. And I think that's an awesome thing that Christie's is doing. Sotheby's has talked about doing it. Phillips is likely to do it next as well. These are the big auction houses that deal with traditional art. And, you can tell it's more old school because they're on the phone, like talking to bidders. Like, you can always tell if it's a crypto bidder or not, because like, you're like, they're like, oh, a new online bid just came in. And you're like, okay, that person knows how to use a computer. And then there's somebody on the phone like this, right? It's just like, should we go up? Oh yeah, you want to go to do another bid? Okay, one more bid. It's like super old school, like someone that doesn't even know how to use a computer yet. So no, but all jokes aside,
That's
like
awesome.
it's really important to have that world come along for the ride and to explain to them what these NFTs are all about. The CryptoPunks founders also launched a new project called MeBits, which is these little 3-dimensional characters, 20,000 of them in total, all with different attributes to them. So different types of hair color and shirts and pants. And like, they're these cute little characters. They're not trying to be too realistic. They're more like, voxel kind of blocky style. And they just sold out like immediately. Like it was, they were doing this Dutch auction, and I think the floor that it hit before they all went was around 2.5 ETH per little me bit. Wow. And it was crazy. It's just these are cool little characters because they're not just art, like they're actually things that you can use, so they come with 3-dimensional models. So, you can imagine in every single, metaverse that's being created, there will be the capacity to say, okay, I have my character. I just want to bring it with me and run around with my little character. It's going to be a fun world, like 3 years from now kind of thing. A lot of these are just now being built. So
yeah, that's what I'm excited about. Like we talked about on the podcast, how to me this stuff really feels like 90s massive multiplayer online games just coming to the forefront and being like that sucked up like hours of months of my, of my life, if you in aggregate. Do you think that this like Christie's thing is really legitimizing like this form of art? I kind of look at this stuff and think like, what if like Andy Warhol just painted soup cans all day long, and the little errors and differences in each one is what like makes it unique, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want like soup can number 42 because it's got like that particular error in it.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think that there's certainly a depth that may be lost, there in the digital format that you would get in something that's traditional, that's hanging on your wall, that you can visit. But then there's also a complexity that's added that you wouldn't get, meaning like some of the programmability of the pieces of art and the creativity that can come from that side as well. So, it's not to say that we should stop painting altogether, but it's like there's something really there's a artist that I like it goes by 0x Def Beef, that is just this crazy artist that has come up with essentially what it does is every time that you trade the NFT, it loses some of the fidelity. So like it loses some of the quality. So it looks at how many times it's kind of been passed around, and it starts getting shittier and shittier the more it's been passed around. So like he has one, I think he might have sold it already, but he had one minting left because, I think he minted, I want to say it was like 7 of them, one fresh minting left. So it was like, who wants to buy the fresh minting, the one that hasn't yet hit a wallet, and there's just some of that creativity that is just so freaking cool, like that is just, that's just like one of probably a dozen examples of artists doing really interesting things with the different programmability side of the art. So I'm excited for that unlock.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you kind of have to suspend your belief a little bit, because you can always go back in time and look at the original, right? But but this idea that this digital thing has this like baked in algorithmic degradation is really, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting to think about. Yes, you can go back in time and look at the original now, but like, what about when there is the ability to go in and say, okay, actually that piece of the code does go away or get encrypted or get locked down, so you won't be able to see. I mean, I guess you could, that if you figured out how to capture it in a high enough resolution. And
so is there randomness that's baked into this? Like, does it randomly degrade? Like whether it pulls some entropy from the chain or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to go look at the code, but I know that the one thing that it does refer back to is the number of times it's been moved. So I'm not sure how it's looking at that on the ETH side, but yeah, the craziness though right now, and this is very applicable to Solana, and it's something that I'm excited for you all. It's just that the hottest projects that we're seeing that when they launch, they have a fixed set of them that go. So like Art Blocks, which is doing the majority of the generative art stuff. If they have a really hot project that has a 256 pieces of artwork, people are shoving through like 4 or 5x gas fees just to get their transaction in. And it's like, it's really sad, because you have something that could be very collectible that people would be into, meaning that a lot of these floors are like very approachable, like, a couple $100 kind of thing. And then you have people shoving through several $1,000s in gas just to get one of them. And it's just like, it's such a bummer. It's such a bummer, because it could be such a very approachable, beautiful thing. And then we have these, whales that come in and just, kind of eat it all up. And there's no chance for the average person except in the secondary market. And then of course they're trying to flip it for 10x as much. But yeah, that man, this gas thing it's actually really awesome for Solana. it's because it's such an opportunity,
Yeah.
Kevin, real quick on that, actually. Do you think open editions and random drawings, how does that play into like bypassing gas fee issues, where a lot of platforms offer options for you just to submit $1 for a ticket, they randomly pick 1 out of 99, and then you kind of avoid this gas overload?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one way around it. I've seen a couple different ways that are starting to emerge. People are starting to move projects over to Matic to try and figure out if they can do this on layer 2 to avoid some of this. Yeah, there's a handful of creative like little hacks. Like I've even spoken with someone that they will try and block the same address from requesting too many from the same auction. But these are all just like cat and mouse, like little simple things, to try and figure out ways to prevent people from coming in snagging a bunch of them. But I really like the idea of like rewarding long-term collectors. So like people that have held certain works of art, and saying like, oh, if you go into art blocks and you just have a naked new wallet, like maybe you should have to get in through some type of random drawing initially. And then once you're in, it's like, okay, does this person own another art block that they haven't moved out of their wallet? That there's, like how true are they to the community and to the collectability side versus just wanting to come in and flip things and just looking at their public wallet to prove some of that. So I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do.
I mean, like, I think the auction and this, like, it drives a lot of the value, right? Like, it's a spectacle of it that like makes it valid in a lot of ways. Do you think that that's still possible without high gas fees?
Yeah, absolutely. These don't really come into play. I mean, you still see the Beeples going for crazy amounts of money, and there's a handful of artists that are just kind of starting to emerge, and like Xcopy is another one that is just his stuff is going for over $1 million. Actually, I shouldn't say his. I don't even know if it's a. It could be. I don't think it's a totally anonymous artist. I'm not sure who it is, but their stuff is going for over $1 million USD for the stuff but they were very early crypto artists as well. So yeah, I mean, the auction stuff is definitely a great way to bring like a concentration of high net worth individuals to bid this stuff up. So I think Christie's and Sotheby's and the others are going to continue to do this. I mean, for them, they get these insane, and they're still demanding them. They get these insane like 20-25% hammer fees just to pull this stuff together, which is nuts.
Yeah. Yep.
But they'll continue to be that bridge for traditional collectors. Because there's no way somebody that's using a cell phone to place a bid is going to be like, okay, let me figure out this MetaMask thing because I want to cut out
they don't care about the fees. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, the gas fees are the smallest part of that.
Right. Exactly.
Is there like a world where we'll start seeing algorithms being sold on Christie's? Like, is just like going away even to the bottom of this? Like, this is the PSEC generative code.
Yes. I believe that will be the case. I mean, in some sense, we are on our art blocks. Like there is real JavaScript and code in here that is doing the generative stuff that you are buying.
It's wild.
So yeah, I mean, how crazy is it to think that? I mean, so much has changed. I used to get picked on for being into computers. Like now, like the algorithm designers are the rock stars. Like what? Yeah. What universe? Like we definitely in a parallel universe. Like we took a different path.
There was this project a while back for music generation that had a infinite black metal YouTube channel that you would just listen to this live stream of black metal, and they had singing generated, the music, all the riffs and everything, and it was pretty good.
Wow.
Like, because you can't really distinguish that from like what like Norwegian black metal bands do, which is kind of awesome. Like there's a way to like if you constrain the design to like something like CryptoPunks or like Meebits, like the small generative pieces,
right? Once
it's constrained, that's where like you can start seeing the innovation happening to the level that an algorithm could start doing beautiful things. And that
no, it's happening. It actually, the last year there was an app called Indle, which won App of the Year from Apple for the Apple Watch, that would create this generative tones and music, like kind of background soundscape type music, all based on a series of stems that it had access to. And then it would change the different frequencies based on your HRV, your heart rate, if you were like trying to relax you or chill you out. And it was all based on this kind of little AI model that they had running on the Apple Watch and then back on phone as well. So it was just so cool that this was all being dynamically generated based on inputs from your own personal like health. Like it's happening. It's crazy. And it sounds great.
Yeah. I've always suspected. I have this theory that based on some wacky high school physics, my impressions of quantum mechanics as a kid is that like the universe is lazy evaluated, right? There's some end state that's already known, and just everything that we see is this like lazy evaluation, kind of like the photon experiment with the split thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the result that drives all the paths. So, us building these blockchains, and then it's a synthetic form of life that can never be shut down, right?
Yeah.
Where else would the singularity occur if not inside like one of these systems? And then all of this interactions that we're into it, the art, the ability for this thing to start tracking our moods and sensor data. So it's just like kind of us bootstrapping this thing. It's so weird.
That is amazing. I hadn't thought of it that way. Like that's some of the inputs as well. That's crazy.
Right, like if this thing gets big enough and it's 10 million people all connected into one shared computer program, right? 10 that's tracking our data, our financial stuff, our moods. We're like the ants are no longer aware of the intelligence of the anthill, right? This thing is like has feedback loops that give us money to go buy more silicon to make sure this thing keeps running.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you're kind of talking about Facebook in some sense already today.
But yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's an interesting world. This is like the theory that the singularity is already here. We're just not
Right.
aware of it.
Right.
um, but like back a bit to reality. What would you recommend to folks that are like out there thinking about NFTs, like especially the artists that are not as tech savvy as somebody that's been coding in Solidity for the last 2 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that a lot of artists are frustrated right now. A friend of mine that's a traditional artist that paints these very beautiful canvas kind of oil paintings around waves. He actually just reached out to me last week and was like, I can't afford these gas fees. Like I cannot even mint something if I want to go sell it. And he thought, this stuff's been selling for around 1,500 or so US dollars per NFT, which is great. But he was going to go spend, $600-700 on just minting fees. So I think that the main thing is that we just need like the on ramp for artists needs to be dead simple, because you're gonna have different, of course, the Photoshop native, I've been using Photoshop since version 2 or 4 or whatever. The people that are really into tech, they'll get it and they'll figure out hacks around it and they'll figure out ways to make this stuff all work. But there's just it'd be a shame if we left a lot of the more traditional artists that don't have the more digital experience behind. And so I'm just really excited to see some of these tools evolve and mature and actually get creative for the first time, where the on ramp is so much simpler for a traditional artist to come in and interact. Then there's also the display side. Like there's a lot that needs to be built out there as well. I mean, there's no real good way to display these in my house. There's these little infinite object screens, which are cool, but there's no big displays. Like no one has really hacked that Samsung Frame TV, which I hope they will, so that it'll support NFTs, because that thing's beautiful for other artwork. But it needs to be, someone needs to crack the entire thing open and just make it an NFT box, like just so that we can have a TV/NFT box. But aside from that, I just think that there's like even mobile display of these things. Some of the wallets, it's just like really crappy way to display the pieces of art that you hold and own. So my hope is that I bought a Solana NFT like a week ago when I saw it going out, or it was maybe 2 weeks ago. And I have it now, but I need to figure out how do I actually get that into some form that I can present back and be proud of, showcasing, and showing off some way. So the wallets will eventually support the stuff, but then I hope there's an app called Gallery right now that works for displaying NFTs. That's more on the Ethereum side though, but more stuff like that. I think it's gallery.so. Yeah, gallery.so. So if you go to gallery.so/Evan Rose, you can see basically all of the NFTs that I chose to kind of pick and highlight, and you can drag them around. And if you can click on one, it'll tell you more information about it and where it was generated. So that's kind of a good first step, but we're getting there. I feel like every couple of weeks I see another really cool, piece of this puzzle being solved. So I'm excited to, I think we just need time. We just need another 6 months of development.
Kevin, did you buy a Solana branded NFT or did you buy an NFT on the Solana network? And if so, are you able to share what you got?
Yeah, it was the let's see here. I have it. It was the I'm gonna
Solable.
it was a Solarians. Is that it? Yeah.
It was them.
Solarians.click is the NFT.
Perfect.
The first generative NFTs on Solana.
They've been flooding the chat, so I'm sure they're going to be happy to hear that.
Yeah, so the Solarians, I was like, the first generative NFT on Solana, this is awesome. So like, of course I had to jump on that right away.
Yep, they did it really
And
good.
it's just like, I'm so, you guys don't even know how pumped I am for the fact that I can just go in there. And I mean, everyone in this already listens already knows, but I mean, when you just see it work without having to wait like an hour for like these things to happen, it's like, oh my gosh, why can't everyone be on Solana now? Because it's just so much better. It's just a better experience, It's just fast, so much faster.
Are you plugged into Phantom Wallet as well then to kind of just do everything seamlessly?
Yeah, so I've started to mess around with the Phantom wallet. I know they're doing the support for NFTs. I'm a little on the wallet side. I'm always like, oh, why don't we just give this a couple more months before I start moving things over to a new wallet? I tend to sit back and wait a little bit for some maturity there before I mess around with wallets. But it's very cool to have it running. I have it in Chrome, and I always check in on it. And obviously you can send a few dollars and play around and stuff like that. But given that team's pedigree, I met with them, had a Zoom with them. Super excited for that project. I mean, just rock star team, really thoughtful, well funded now. It's going to be great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think one other active NFT project, we have several coming in through the hackathon that you'll get to see, but another active one that people have been talking about a lot is Star Atlas. They're doing augmented reality posters as well, which has been a first of its kind that we've seen on the ecosystem, which has been a really cool experience.
Yeah, I need to get in there, and I listened to your interview with them that you did last season. I thought that was great. It's just like that. When you listen to it, you get super excited, and they're like, "Yeah, we're probably like 2-3 years out," and you're like, "Come on, I need this like tomorrow." Do you know what I mean? Like it sounds so exciting, and then they're like, "It's gonna take years? Are you kidding me?" Like
it's
I just want to happen sooner.
Building like a full space game, right? Like Freelancer, right? That they played that thing to death. Like having a really rich experience there. It's just so much work. It's a crazy ambitious project. I'm hoping that they move as fast as possible and break things.
Yeah, I hope that one of the things that I did like that they did the NFT thing. I saw that. I'm hoping that they can kind of like not try and boil the ocean, but break it into components where we can actually kick the tires a little bit, to your point, on the earlier side. And like, who cares if a lot of the mechanics aren't there, but let's just like start playing,
Yep. Yeah. That's their plan, is to like start shipping mini games and stuff like that. And like, as soon as you have like a few interactions you can build with, I think the exciting thing for me there is that it's possible that like in those 3 years, it develops into like an open source project where people are just like adding more and more interactions and interplay into the game development. And this was what I think failed for a lot of massive online games like World of Warcraft, Ultima Online. Those games kind of died as soon as the company, it became like not a huge growth factor for the company, right? Like if their revenues are not going up, they're like, okay, give it to the B team and just put it on life support.
Right.
And like, if it's an open source ecosystem, I think there's just the possibilities are endless. This is where like you can actually, I think, outpace Epic and Fortnite and any of those companies. And like that's like my dream, right? Is like, how do we build the universe? Not how does like Fortnite build like their own version of the metaverse and like that we get to import our crypto punks into.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's going to be indie developers that like loosen up a little bit and say, actually, the community can play a bigger role here. That eventually, that'll happen.
But like that conversation of like, for artists, have you talked to any of the folks that whether they build the art and that ownership of that artwork passes to the owner of the key, where they can do whatever they want with it. They can import it into games and stuff like that. Have people like understood that component? Because usually artists have this idea that they still own the artwork. It's their copyright, right? They kind
Right.
of can do whatever they want with it. Is that something that like people are starting to understand or like deal with yet?
Well, yeah, it is. It's funny, it's tricky because I think that you're right in that most artists still believe that they own it and they're not quite sure how to come to grips with anonymous owners and like the transfer of rights and what licenses fall under. One of the things that I had this conversation with CryptoPunks founders when I interviewed them for my podcast, and they were saying that they're fine with like someone taking a CryptoPunk and saying that's my identity. I want to have that as part of like my, my Twitter avatar, and I want to put it on t-shirts and, that kind of thing. But they also want to say we own this brand so that it doesn't just get knocked off. It's a really tricky and fine line to walk, right? Because if you just give up all rights, all of a sudden there could be CryptoPunks with like an X, two X's at the end or something, right? That can use the exact same design language and confuse people, and they can launch the second project. People could be buying these thinking they're buying the original CryptoPunks Larva Labs, but it's not. It'll be a knockoff, right? So owning the actual rights to that gives them the ability to legally chase down and squash a lot of that and prevent that from happening. So I see what they're saying. I mean, it is tricky. So it's like in some sense, you want to give individual owners a lot of rights, but not make sure that doesn't bleed out to something where, well, I'll give you a great example. I was in CryptoVoxels the other day, and I was walking around and I went through a lot of these like kind of virtual NFT galleries that you can walk through, and people were hanging up their different arts. And I was talking to actually one of the curators, and I'm like, okay, so who can put these up? Like, what's the authentication process look like? Like, someone has to come in here and like add their wallet, and they're like, no, actually, you just tell the software whatever you want to hang wherever you want it, and there's something like awesome about that, because then you can have your own gallery of stuff that you really admire. But it's also like there can be some imitation and potentially some ways to create fraud if you create a fake gallery that's selling stuff that isn't yours. And so there needs to be at some point in time, and I'm sure this will happen, it's just a sign of maturity of these platforms. But when you walk in and you see someone has a Meebits avatar they're running around with, if you click on them, and I hate to use I don't think blue checkbox analogy is a bad one, but something that says that this is actually owned by the person that says that they own it, right? A verified, like they've identified their wallet and this person does own this piece. I think is going to be important long-term for the space, because we just can't, otherwise it's just going to lead to a lot of really bad actors and bad things.
Yeah. I mean, and we have the irony is that we have like the most sophisticated technology to do that, right? Everyone's got a private key infra, like that's like the best in class at this point. I think
it's definitely doable. Yeah.
But
I always think about this stuff and I'm just like, if Elon's relanding rockets on barges out in sea, like we can figure out how to like put a blue checkbox next to somebody's NFT. Like we can figure like the coding can be done.
Yeah. PKI, we have it. We have the technology. It is like a cool part of the space, right? Like everything is here. It just takes education and a bit of like human hustle to like get it out.
That's the other thing I would love to see on the Solana side. If there's any hackers listening out there, like, it's interesting. I think there's I don't know what it is from a product standpoint yet, but I think that when you go into CryptoVoxels or you go into some of these 3D worlds, they're pretty much dead. Like, I don't know if you've been in there, but like when you walk around, there's like not a whole lot of people doing much of anything. Like they're spread out. Now they're great. We're saying we're going to have a party, then 100 people all show up at the same destination. Right. But like, I almost feel like they're being the fact that they don't have any constraints and they are really built for anything leads you to be like, oh, what am I doing here? Like it's fun to build a gallery and stuff like that. But if someone purpose built like an NFT world that was just for like, what would you do differently? That if it was just, maybe you wouldn't have floating little human bodies going around. Maybe there would be a different way to walk through galleries. Maybe there would be a different way to have discussions. Like, what would that look like So I hope that people are thinking on that level as well. Like, what can we do to interact with I almost think more of a GeoCities like type environment. I'm super dating myself, but like where you can just like own a little plot like top down 2D style versus it having to be some kind of crazy complex 3D world, you know?
Yep, I had one of those. I mean, the GeoCities. Like, I think I always like, I don't know, this is part of like maybe going through the startup grind is you need to like build the product that people want first. And then like these are features, right? Like importing all of the world Ethereum or Solana's NFTs into this like Star Atlas mini game would be awesome, right? Like having like a spaceship that looks like a mini bit that's just flying around, right?
Yeah.
Like the like so like start doing like these ridiculous things and then see what sticks within the kind of product market fit cycle for that thing. Where you're like adding users, right? Like what do users want? Like the open-ended stuff, I've always seen that kind of fall over. Outside of
Yeah.
like Second Life, that was kind of a interesting, weird experiment before its time.
Yeah, Second Life had a massive economy. Yeah, it's funny how a lot of these things that, even though in the virtual worlds as well, I feel like the ones that tried to take themselves too seriously, like tried to make the characters look too lifelike, was like it would have been. Everyone's like, let's make this look more and more like humans. Let's get this when they talk, their mouth moves exactly like a
Yeah.
human's, and then it ends up being these little like boxy pixelated guys running around that actually ends up winning. You know, it's because people didn't need that. They just
Yeah.
wanted something simple and fun. You know.
Yeah.
Well, I
Do,
think a
do
question
you
for
think?
both of you actually on that same
Yeah, go
topic.
ahead.
What do you think when people go into these virtual worlds? What are they looking to get out of it? Because a lot of the times the creators build something and they focus on complexity of the environment, and they build these really robust like metaverses, but you kind of lose a sense of community when it's so large that you find yourself running around worlds by yourself. Like what do you
Yeah,
think when people join? What are they looking to get out of it?
it's a good question. Maybe I'll comment and then Totally can as well. I think for me, the frustration I have personally is when I get in there, it's like they clearly boil the ocean. Like it's not good at anything. Like you get into crypto voxels and you walk around and you're like, okay, it's like there's these building blocks and there's these galleries you can walk into, but it is like there's nothing you can do from a utility standpoint. Like there's nothing like you can't play any games inside of it or anything like that. It's just kind of like display of buildings, right? And so display of buildings, some hanging artwork, lack of humans, no easy way to connect with others. There's nothing like, even like when you do see other people there, it's just more little bots like standing in front of you that are walking, and some are like flying awkwardly, and some's got have their head stuck in a wall, and you're just like, it's just there's no purpose outside of just coming to look at a few pieces of art. And that stuff, that display for me can be done just as well in a web browser or somewhere else, So I don't see that. Whenever I see these systems really work, and I see this on the venture side as well, like on the investment side, it has to be a true, like at least close to an order of magnitude improvement over something that's already existing for people to really say, this is so important, I must spend my time there. It can't just be a small little incremental improvement over a web page. Like people just bail on it, especially if it's more complex in terms of the lift. I mean, this was the problem with VR initially, right? Like we had these really heavy, massive goggle things hooked to computers. And it was sweaty, it was awkward. There was no multiplayer experience in terms of like if someone was watching you, they were laughing at you and recording you on their phone at how stupid you looked. Like it wasn't a big enough leap forward for me to spend any considerable amount of time in there.
Yeah, same. I think like you have to be really into like video games and VR to get into it. I've got a VR set that's just collecting dust, and I had like the first Oculus SDK. I really like the more like display-based augmented reality experiences, like where you have like some big display that displays something like a Star Atlas poster that you can kind of like look through, like through the three-dimensionality of it, right? It's almost like a window to another world. That feels less like nausea inducing.
Yeah.
And kind of cool, right? Because you can, it like, it can be part of the design aesthetic of your house, right, and give you that like out of world experience, right? This is like a window into space. That kind of stuff I think is really cool. But yeah, I like the some of the holographic things that people are researching, where you just look at the screen like on a table and you see that that part of it too is something really cool that people are developing. But
I mean,
it's
we've been
just
wanting
too,
that since Star Wars, right? Like,
yeah, right.
it's been a long
Yeah,
time
yeah,
coming.
yeah. It's just early, right? Like, I had this idea like a while back. Like if you when those like magnets came out, like those like teeny tiny magnets, it to make them like electromagnetic and have them automatically reassemble and like start like 3D art out of that. That's like that morphs. But it's just like too early for any of this. It just takes too much time to develop.
Yeah, that would be huge if you could do an auto assembling like
Yeah,
magnet. Oh,
yeah.
I'm on mute for a second. Sorry, I have someone in the backyard cleaning real quick, so I'm just muting. The old hand signal. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Are you are you planning on making in your own art, or
It's a good
just like look?
question. I like it from the coding standpoint. There, I might dabble on that. Like, I don't consider myself a quote unquote artist. Like, anytime I do on the design side, it's more on the product side. Just like functionality, usability side. That's always been my roles.
Yeah, Austin, did we lose Kevin? All right.
I wasn't sure if that was me, but I think that is Kevin. We'll give him a second, and I'm sure he'll jump back
Yeah,
in. I was like on to my Twitch thing.
the lawnmower went over his fiber optic cable.
Oh my gosh. This is good. I don't know if you've been paying attention to like the Twitch chat or anything like that, but people are loving this. I think these are conversations that like we typically don't have as part of our normal content map, and so incorporating a lot more of this in seems to have done really, really well. Oh, he'll be back.
Yeah, yeah. You got questions I can answer? Just throw some stuff at me.
Yeah, so just kind of like what do you want to see people build? I think this is the main thing. The hackathon started last night, yesterday. Like hackathon officially
Yeah,
started yesterday. Like we're under wraps. Like what do you want to
I'm.
see people build? And for everyone in the chats, Kevin will be back. Just give us
I
a moment.
if like I don't want to be prescriptive because I am not like I'm not like a the good test, like you
Yeah,
got to have your own vision. So with NFTs, art is such an open design space. What you
yeah.
believe in, like I really feel like
Sorry
that
about
people are.
that.
Oh, no worries, man.
You're all good.
We were just asking like what do you think people should build?
Like,
My
yeah,
thoughts were like build what you're really passionate about because art is such a like space where conviction is almost the most important part. Like don't worry about like what other people think or what you think other people want. Like uh like some of the coolest digital art experiences that I've had were like the visualizers for Winamp that were like like made a huge impression on me, like watching the interplay of like art and music. So doing that kind of stuff, like plug a visualizer to Audius and like make that an NFT. That would be pretty wild. And that, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
but go ahead.
yeah, 100% agree. I mean, and it's also what you'll stick with long term, right? Like
Yeah,
these things are not going to be when you choose something that you're really personally passionate about versus something that we're going to tell you to go do today. Like the second you run into any like, as you always will, something's going to like not work or be a pain in the ass. Like you have to have that internal drive and passion for it, otherwise it never works.
yep, yeah. That's 100% true. Like in any kind of startup, if you're really thinking about it as an artist or a startup, you're gonna have to eat glass for a while before you get some success.
That's right.
I think artists probably know that more than anyone else, more even than like founders.
what are your
Hopefully you all can
guys'
see.
what are your guys' opinions on loaning and fractionalizing NFTs. So I kind of wanted to ask this earlier in the conversation, but you were talking about like the blue check marks. So let's say you're able to authorize that this is the real CryptoPunks, for example, and then someone puts it up on an NFT lending platform. Like, what are your thoughts on how ownership of that should be decided as it gets moved around from parties that are not the original owner? Because I foresee this being something that really, I see this as something that really blows up in the future, especially like collateralized loans against your NFTs, where then someone can borrow it, you earn interest as they're out using it at like a party in a virtual metaverse or something. So like, how do you think that should be handled?
Yeah, I mean, there's no easy answer here, right? Like I've seen this already done in a couple different ways. I mean, NFTX does it to some extent where you can wrap a punk and throw it into a pool and pull out some cash while it's sitting there in that pool, but you're not guaranteed to get the same one back out. I've seen the way I've seen it done most successfully has not been how do we tokenize it and divide it up, but because that's like, how do you figure out the buyout price? How do you figure out how to get people out of the ownership if you want to bring it back together as a single unit? Those mechanics are challenging. I have seen DAOs come together and purchase NFTs and hold them as a group, and I think that's the cleanest way. You don't try and do up some weird fractional ownership. You can do the DAO takes ownership of that entity, and then there is the fractionalized ownership actually happens at the DAO level, not at the NFT level, if that makes sense.
That's a cool approach too. There's something, yeah, like then you kind of guys, everybody comes together and buys a gallery effectively, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we have that. I'm a member of a DAO called Flamingo DAO, and you know we've just a ton of different CryptoPunks and you name it, and essentially what happens for those of you that don't know and don't see it because it's a kind of backroom Discord is there will be anyone can bring up something new, like, hey, I found this great new artist, look at this, what do you think? And then there's like these little simple like voting buttons that you use in Discord, you know, like for anything else, like a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if it gains enough momentum, then it's just like the treasury funds are deployed and like the purchase is made and is transferred into the secure vault the DAO then holds. If it's over a certain price, you know, and it requires like a bigger vote, then it's actually done on chain, and there's smart contracts for all of that. And then you go in and you actually authorize your wallet and you go and you actually place a vote. But I mean, they were able to acquire, you know, CryptoPunk Alien like that, which at the time was, I think it was like something like $800,000 for it, which was crazy to see them come together and actually make that big purchase. But yeah, it's a really clean and dynamic, and they can just move so quickly. Like this stuff happens. There'll be something will go up for a vote and be purchased within a couple hours, you know, which is great.
I didn't realize that you were part of Flamingo DAO. That's really cool. Actually, the DAO and social token space is something that I'm personally really interested in. For a lot of folks here, they might not be familiar with what something like Flamingo DAO actually does. Do you want to like just take a moment to expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Flamingo was a purpose-built a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization that comes together to just collect NFT art. And so essentially there was, you know, the original DAO project that on Ethereum that did not work, that had that hack that everyone heard about, and everyone kind of gave up for a while. And then a couple of the original folks that created that then started the LAO, LAO, and then from there created Flamingo DAO, which was just for NFTs. And this was all done under or working with a legal group called Open Law. And essentially, they created this organization that is very much run. I mean, there's an LLC behind it, so there's a real corporate entity behind it. In that, it's, you know, you get actual tax paperwork at the end of the year, all of that good stuff. But you come in, and when they have open available slots, new members are voted upon, and then if you're accepted in, you buy in with some ETH. So we'll say, okay, the overall collection of all of the NFTs in the project is probably worth this much. So it would cost you this much ETH to actually come in and buy, you know, 1% of the pool or whatever it may be. You transfer your money in all via smart contracts, and then you're accepted into the membership. You get access to the chat community, and then inside of Discord, there's all these different private channels, and you know they're kind of dedicated to all the different topics you could imagine. There's a channel on generative art. There's a channel just for Beeple. There's a channel for all of the top artists that are out there. And so, the group comes together and does weekly calls. And, there'll be like a call where you jump on and you talk about all the latest, new, hottest NFTs. And then they decide collectively, like, is this something we want to talk to the artist about? Do we want to go out and try and buy some of this artwork on the secondary market? Do we want to try and buy it when it's being minted? Do we want to have one-off commission pieces done? It can be a whole different ways of going out and collecting this art. And then once the purchase has been made, it goes in, and you can see all of it publicly. You can just go to flamingo.xyz. And then on inside there's a section where you can just you view the gallery and see all the different works of art that the DAO holds. And then eventually there's a vote that says, okay, I think we should sell this particular piece of art, or it's appreciated this much, and we have 2 of them, so let's get rid of one of them. And when any sales happen, it's just like any other thing, in that there's distributions back to the owners of the DAO. And so Flamingo is a very overarching kind of like built for all NFTs. Then there are very specific ones. Like there's one called Squiggle DAO that is just these little squigglies that were created in art blocks, which was Snowfro's original generative squiggly little guy. And those little squigglies you can still pick up for, I think it was like $700 or $800 for like the floor price ones. And if you just own one of those squigglies in your wallet, they'll let you into the DAO. So it's kind of like a way of like you knock on the door and they say, show me your squiggly, and then you're let into the secret room where you can talk about all these different things. So there's a bunch of different ways that people are approaching it. Some you have to own autoglyphs to get into their NFT DAOs, and it's just a fun way for collectors to get together, discuss new projects, and then collect them under a structure.
Well, totally, we're gonna say something. I didn't want to interrupt you for like the 3rd time.
No, I was just agreeing with Kevin.
Okay. Yeah,
I had like a.
I was just gonna say, I think this is something that's really interesting. Being able to have communities that you have to prove ownership of a specific asset or number of assets, because it just means that everyone has equal skin in the game. And it allows for more of an authentic community to be formed around something that everyone believes in enough to put capital up for. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things from a community building perspective that we're going to see with incorporating NFTs and DAOs in the future, where a lot of artists are going to open up websites or specific Discord groups where you need to prove ownership of X, Y, and Z. And then that way all of these collectors can come together. Outside of Flamingo, Pleasure DAO is doing some cool stuff. They're a rather new one. Seed Club has been another interesting project involved with all of that. And they're all just taking really, really unique approaches to it. But for anyone that's watching, if you haven't explored the DAO space, there's a lot of amazing things going on there. It's a great way to build community, meet people that are really dedicated to this space, and get involved with something that's actually trying to make a positive change within crypto. And I suggest everyone checks it out. Totally. We have about 4 minutes left. Kevin, I'm sure you are slammed. Anything you want to cover for the last minute or 2 here, and then I might ask a couple of questions that have been floating around the chat.
Yeah, I just want to like reiterate, like folks that are building for the hackathon, like, just like try something, like whatever it is, and then like iterate. Like don't think too much about like having like the most important thing as a hit on your first go. Like I failed 1,000 times before I did something right. So like just keep that in mind and like have fun, right? Like go build something, ship something, have fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, if you're, I'm obviously a huge fan of all things Solana and continue to track it, and was an early investor there as well. So if people want to ping me on Twitter, I have open DMs. So if you're working on something for the hackathon and you're just like, hey, I think you think this is cool, and you just want me to take a look at it, I'd love to do that and see. Am I allowed to do that as a judge? Am I allowed to look at things early? Maybe not.
We didn't hear.
Yeah. We don't have very strict, like if you're like one of those founders that knows how to hustle and talk to the judges beforehand, those are the people that we're looking for.
Nice. Yeah, it just dawned on me I might be helping them cheat, but yeah, I'd love to see stuff.
if you can find a way to cheat, that you might have the right kind of mix of characteristics to succeed as a startup founder.
There you go.
It's now self-selection through Kevin's DMs for who wins the
Yeah.
hackathon. Yeah, I think just closing out here, Kevin. Any advice for people that are building aside from them hitting your DMs, which you're a bold person for keeping those open at your follower account?
Yeah, I think Tully's got a great point here, and it's definitely worth mentioning again, is that, you know, some of the things, especially around hackathons where your time is, you know, fixed and you don't have a ton of, you have to get something out. It is so easy to say, I want to go do these 10, 15, 20 things, and this is going to be so huge and awesome. And then you just get stuck not launching anything or actually shipping anything. So just, you know, boiling it down to what is the one thing I do want to ship and have ready to go and actually have it working by that time is much more important than having a feature complete like version of something. So just get something up and running that you can continue to iterate on later. And what is that minimal viable product they always talk about that you can get to that is enough to where it wows people, but doesn't feel fully polished or fully functional yet. That would be my big piece of advice.
Kevin, real quick,
Yeah.
because someone's been asking a ton of questions. I've ignored most of their questions, but they just popped a new one in here. Do you think NFT markets can move from ETH to Sol? Like, do you think that's something that we're going to see in the future of like entire markets moving from the Ethereum infrastructure to Solana?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, as much as I don't believe that, well, I have high hopes for Solana on so many different fronts, but I do believe there's a lot of pain points right now in the Ethereum world, and there's no real reason why they have to be on Ethereum. Some of the like original collectors are saying, well, I want it to be on Ethereum because I know it's just going to be around, and it's like it was the first, you know, even though I guess Namecoin was probably the first to actually do NFTs, but you know, those questions around longevity of a blockchain, they just need time, right? Like people become more and more comfortable moving things over, and especially if you can prove to people that the tooling is there and that it's just so much easier to do it on the Solana side and cheaper, and it's just like it's. You know, I have a feeling that in 6 months' time, when we look at what's being built on Solana around all the tooling side, and if an artist can come in, and I can, you know, my earlier example about a friend that didn't want to spend $800 in gas fees, and they're definitely going to have a hard time trying to figure out how to do some of this Matic stuff. If I can point them to really easy Solana tooling, like for them, they don't care. They don't have, they kind of like, they're not stuck to Ethereum. They just want to get their artwork out there. And I would imagine a lot of these, like OpenSeas and others, they're going to support other chains. Like there's already a considerable amount of NFTs that are being minted on Wax, and you know there's 3 or 4 other chains that are producing NFTs every single day that people are collecting. So it's not like this is going to be a one chain to rule them all. I believe it's going to be multiple chains.
I think.
Yeah, I think one chain will be 80% of the world, but we'll see which one that is. I'm pretty sure it's going to be us, but it is such a Pareto efficient space where like every trade-off has like a different result somewhere else. So, you know, definitely see BTC not going away anywhere, and Ethereum as well. Like especially, you know, there's a world where ETH1 sticks around even if ETH2 launches, which would be interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy how just I think about when I think of Ethereum and how much innovation there was there back a few years ago. It was just like mind blowing. You're like, whoa, what can be done? This is crazy. And now when I think of it, it's just like I feel bloat, you know, I feel bloat and a lot of like side hacks to make things happen. And I mean, this is probably going to happen to everyone, you know, unless we can continue to stay really nimble. It's just like with time, there's like something will happen to where people will be like, Solana is no longer good for this like it used to be, you know. It's like how are you gonna prevent that from happening? But I do feel like, you know, in all my spidey senses, when you watch what's going on with Solana, and you look at like the different wallets that are coming online and just different projects that are moving over, and USDC coin coming over, and like all these different assets are starting to shift. Like it feels like now is the time. Like things are all really starting to happen, and I don't know. I have a feeling that this is going to be NFTs will have a great home. If the tooling is built, I think it's going to be a big deal for Solana. It'll we'll see. Well, you guys know more than I
Awesome.
do on that front, so I'm excited to see what's coming.
Yep, me too. Cool. Yeah, on that note, I mean, it's I've got meetings back to backs, but really awesome to chat with you. I hope the folks listening to this had a good time, and like built some really cool shit for the hackathon.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks, Tully. Thanks, Austin. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Have a good day.